Welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. As you could see, we are going to be talking about global business today, and our very special guest today is Rebecca Peters, an attorney, and just a super connected person in Washington, D.C., and a lobbyist and a spokesperson and a get it done kind of person having to do with the semiconductor industry. So please do a self-intro a lot better than I could do it.
Sure, Ed. Well, good morning or I guess afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Rebecca Peters, and I work with Samsung Semiconductor. I'm a director of public policy on the semiconductor side for the company, and I handle a lot of our workforce, immigration, employment, labor, and intellectual property issues. And we've been in the midst of the CHIPS debate and implementation, the CHIPS Act, so that we can expand our manufacturing footprint here in the United States as a company. So we're very excited about that, Ed. I'll mention just recently, just last week, we were able to issue our 2023 Economic Impact Report, where we have our chip facilities down in Austin and building out our facilities in Taylor, Texas. And we actually doubled our economic impact numbers in Central Texas from 13 billion in 2022 to 26.8 billion of economic contribution and impact in the area. So, we hope to add tens of thousands of new jobs in the coming years. We've already added over 18,000 jobs just in direct and indirect construction jobs, just as an example, as we build out these facilities, but very excited about the future. And as Ed mentioned, I have a long background, 24 years in Washington, having worked and started at the Department of Justice, Legacy INS, and moving on to practice law, and then moving into the trade association space for many years here in Washington. So very comfortable here in Washington and doing the work to move the industry forward.
So you've been a speaker to Congress and heavily involved in associations getting visibility and helping others get visibility in the Washington milieu of policy development and conversations. A lot of that is networking, isn't it? But it sounds crass to use that word, but it's who knows you, not just who you know.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I think, as you think about how you want to be successful in Washington, as you think about how to kind of really get your advocacy across in Washington, because Washington can also almost always at times be dysfunctional. You've really got to lead with effective communicating internally with your company or with your clients. And that means just being very transparent about what's going on the ground here in Washington, setting reasonable expectations. It means, raising your company or your client's visibility, as you're talking about, Ed, on the ground, which means, you use the word networking, but it really is a great word to describe it, because you are networking as you make contacts and build contacts and maintain relationships, both in Congress and in the administration, where we can have any sort of public policy move forward, and we want to make sure that we are influencing that to the best of our ability for your company or your clients. And the other way you can really be impactful in Washington is to make sure that you are working with the experts on the ground, whether that's coalitions or trade associations, and making sure you're positioning yourself into leading positions, whether it's chairing committees for a trade association or, helping lead an executive committee of a coalition. These are all things that I think help you advocate well on the ground in Washington and raise your visibility, to your point.
Thank you very much for that deep dive. Let's talk about the role. What we're talking about is international business and international talent, and the ability or the need for companies, particularly here in the US, to build a pipeline, a worker pipeline of qualified individuals, highly educated, in order to satisfy Samsung's and other chip makers the need for excellent talent. So as you could see, part of our logo here is mobile talent and global business, and that means immigration. So everything is really looped together, and it's almost like an electrified third rail today because it's such a political issue, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is. And I think, just talking from my experience with Samsung over the last 2.5 years and working to pass the CHIPS Act through Congress, and now we're implementing the law. We know, and I know our immigration friends and global mobility friends around the world know this, Ed, but we here in the United States have a shortfall of about 1.4 million STEM workers
Wow.
across the economy. We know in the semiconductor industry, nearly 70,000 of those, we will have a gap of those semiconductor technicians, engineers, and computer scientists over the next 5 years as we are, rapidly expanding the semiconductor industry to make chips here in the United States. And so immigration is extremely key to work alongside building our U.S. worker pipeline. It is really the element that right now that is currently just dealing with the reality that over 50% of those graduating out of our U.S. universities in advanced degree and PhD STEM courses are foreign nationals.
Hmm.
That is the pool of individuals we have to work with. When we get into some of these very specific jobs and spaces, specifically at Samsung with engineering. And so I think, while we might be able at Samsung to build out our US worker workforce with our technicians at our chip facilities, the example is immigration really plays a huge role for us when we're talking about highly educated, highly skilled engineers and researchers as we work in the semiconductor space. But I know this is a reality across many industries. So extremely critical to what we're doing at this time, Ed.
So, as Americans, we shouldn't be afraid of this. We should welcome it.
That's right. These individuals complement our workforce. There's been numerous studies over the past 2 decades that show that these key foreign national workers actually grow U.S. jobs anywhere between 3 to 5 jobs a worker, depending on the report you're looking at. So it really is a benefit to the nation's economic competitiveness as well as national security.
So these people are well paid, which means they're
Yes.
they're paying taxes.
They're very well paid, and at least they're very well paid, and they are contributing to our economic input here in the U.S.
Yeah, okay,
Absolutely.
that's really good. Just that we get that on the record here. Okay, so this program is not political, but of course we're talking about politics and about getting things done. So let's talk about Samsung in the U.S. It's been in the U.S. since last century, right?
Yeah, we've actually been in the U.S. At least on the semiconductor side since 1996, but we've been in the U.S. as a company since the 1970s.
Hmm.
And in fact, we've been and we were the first foreign headquartered company. For those of you that don't know, Samsung is headquartered in Seoul, South Korea. But we were the first foreign national headquartered company to start producing chips in the United States. And we started doing that in 1996. So we've been a part of the US market for quite some time. It is one of our top, if not our top customer base, which is why we're really excited to continue to expand our presence here.
So the onshoring, in other words,
Mhm.
bringing manufacturing into the U.S. that used to be done in other places. This is it's a smart policy, of course. Now, STEM, that basically science, technology, and what?
Engineering,
And
engineering and math.
and that, excuse me, that's not just for semiconductors, that's for healthcare, that's for medicine.
A lot of industries, even finance, even Wall Street utilizes these people. So yeah, it's across the board, Ed, and a lot of tech companies beyond us are using it, as you mentioned, healthcare, as you mentioned, research facilities. I mean, there's a whole universities are utilizing these individuals. It's a whole host of industries that are actually using this talent.
So when I was a kid, I mean, we're talking about education systems and gearing up for being able to comprehend and learn the stuff. And but when I was a kid, I didn't get that. Had no clue. I was really an expert at watching cowboy movies on TV and I Love Lucy and Superman and things like that, but not scientific, no scientific education other than I don't even remember anything until we got to high school and I took biology, which I got a B in somehow. So today's kids,
Oh yeah.
they're on the computer when they're two,
Oh yeah.
on the phone. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's much more integrated now. I'll give the example. My 7-year-old niece, and even when she was much younger, I go visit her out in Montana, where my family's from, and I think she's doing STEM camp. They're doing STEM presentations in school at 7. I think one year she did something on the a crystal and how it has the prism on it, and she did something completely different this year on like plants. I don't know. She also is extremely computer savvy. When I was there, I was taking a nap. She came in, she somehow figured out how to unlock my mobile phone and took pictures of me napping with her making, silly faces in the picture. So, these kids are light years beyond us, Ed, light years.
That's
But
just
it is something
amazing.
it is amazing, but it is something, I will say in the semiconductor space, and as we have more critical and emerging technologies, that we have to get out there as industries and educate about these opportunities, how you actually get into these fields. This is one of the reasons we don't have as many folks working in the semiconductor industry, because I think until maybe 3 years ago, people didn't really throw around the word semiconductor as casually as they do today. It wasn't something that was really understood. And so we have a lot to do as an industry, which we are working to do, to really build out appropriate semiconductor courses and make sure that kids in K through 12 are aware that these are opportunities for them. And, make sure that we have ways in which underrepresented communities, for instance, can get involved in the industry, something that we are working hard to do under the CHIPS and Science Act. One example is, not much is moving through Congress these days, except for maybe the funding legislation. But we do anticipate, for example, a vote on the House suspension calendar very soon for the bipartisan Pell Act, which is going to expand Pell Grant opportunities to individuals in short-term training, 8 to 10 weeks. So that's really critical, like for instance, for our technicians in the semiconductor industry to open up opportunities for those people. So a lot that can be done and that we're looking to do as we move ahead.
So let's just talk a little bit about Congress. Um,
Sure.
it is February 27 and March 1 and March 8 are critical funding dates, and the threat of a shutdown or continuing resolution to take care of something. I mean, all this is in the air right now. and there's a lot of politics or discussions going on right now as we speak. So it's really high stakes at this moment in time. Once again, today is Feb 27, 2024. So let me talk, let me get some guidance from you. Your insight is very, very acute and special in this regard because of your experience in Washington, in Congress, connected with the Semiconductor Association for Training and Development, amongst other groups that you're a part of. Why don't you tell us about some of these groups that you're involved with and why those are tied into exactly what we have been talking about?
Sure, Ed. Well, I mean, there are a number of coalitions and trade associations in town that many in the tech industry, beyond the semiconductor companies, are involved in and advocating not only to grow our U.S. worker pipeline here in the United States, but also advocating for moving forward any sort of benefit we can get in the high skilled immigration space. So these are groups like Compete America, the Compete America Coalition, and actually, I'm proud to say our Compete America retreat this week on Thursday and Friday is being hosted at Samsung. So we're very involved. But last retreat we had Amazon, host the retreat. So we are constantly working within coalitions to move various issues forward. Another example I'll give is we are very much a U.S. chamber member. We are very much a Semiconductor Industry Association member. I utilize both those trade associations for very different things. For instance, the Semiconductor Industry Association, I chair their workforce committee, and we are working to put forward a second paper. We put out a great paper last year about the skills gap numbers we would have in the semiconductor space that I referenced earlier. But we're working on a whole set of legislation and Congress do now to help us fill our U.S. worker skills gaps. Like I mentioned, the Pell Grant, the Perkins Act will be reauthorized next year. There's a whole host of things beyond just grants that the administration can do to help us get the talent we need. The chamber has been very helpful, for example, in helping us defend against some of the more aggressive Department of Labor rules that we've seen coming out on the independent contractor rule, the joint employer liability rule. We're anticipating an OSHA walk-around rule, where actually in the coming months, the Department of Labor could finalize that an OSHA, and an Office of Safety and Health, coming to inspect your employer facility could walk around the site with a union member, a labor union member who is not an employee of the company. So it could be an anti-fossil fuel advocate that's walking around with an OSHA agent at your site who's not an employee. So there's a lot of things the chamber is helping us deal with that are challenges in the immigration space through litigation and other things that the chamber is very good at doing. And of course, we continue to advocate on immigration through numerous trade associations and coalitions, as I mentioned, Compete America, ITI, and also the Semiconductor Industry Association, to kind of move the needle forward where we can. We actually just got some really great outcomes with the Department of State issuing their visa revalidation pilot program. And we continue to work in the H-1B modernization rules space and other spaces I'm happy to talk about. But we get a lot of value out of working in these group environments.
You mentioned earlier the Pell Grants. Now, this is a political act that goes back years. It's a funding mechanism for special education. Uh,
Mhm.
and now you're talking about a plan to expand the scope and the deliverable of the Pell Grants so that more kids uh, who are from underprivileged areas, but who have a capability or a capacity for learning will get funding.
That's right, Ed. And this is just a bill that we learned a couple weeks ago would be put on the House suspension calendar, HR 6585. It's the Bipartisan Workforce Pell Act. It's I just use it as an example of something that is
Oh, I couldn't hear you right now.
sorry, Ed. So
Okay.
I was just saying that we are supporting one of the only other bipartisan acts in Congress right now that has a chance of moving forward, other than the tax extender bill or the funding bills, which is HR 6585, the Bipartisan Workforce Pell Act. And it's just one example of something that could be done now to help us grow our US STEM worker pipeline, as you mentioned, for underprivileged individuals. Um, Currently, the law allows individuals who are working toward a bachelor's degree, for instance, to receive grant funding, but they are under this bill expanding that to include short-term training. Uh, and that would incorporate, for instance, our semiconductor technicians, where we have a shortage of workers of over, 20,000 workers over the next 5 years. So it does give opportunities to those that are maybe more underrepresented, economically disadvantaged. And it's something we're supporting and watching. We think it
So
has a good chance of passing in the House.
yeah, you just cut out again, but I think you said that it has a good chance of passing the House. Yeah, okay, good. All right, as we come to a close here in the next couple of minutes for this abbreviated session today, and I do welcome you to come back again when you have more time. Uh, the the mood in Congress, this being a political year, is crazy making in my view, and and all of this still has to get done. And I would think that uh, your experience in Washington is thrilling, actually, with all this action going on. So take us out of this today by describing what's your typical day with all this going on.
Sure. Well, I'll give the example maybe just of today. I'll use today as an example. The days vary, but you're right. We're in the middle of this funding deadline where we could likely see a short-term CR or really a short-term shutdown happen if Speaker Johnson doesn't get his 4 first appropriations bills done by Friday, which is looking less and less likely. And I think, my days kind of revolve around number one, our top priority is moving our chips implementation forward. But for instance, today I woke up and had some calls preparing for helping to lead our high skilled immigration retreat at Samsung later this week. I'm then had a coalition call. I now am speaking to a group of you. I will head to the office soon, and we will get the latest briefing from some of our consultants on what's happening in the current political environment. I will then stay to have conversations with them about setting up some high skilled immigration briefings on the Hill and strategy there. I then might talk to some of my peer companies in the chips space to catch up on recent ongoings where we are being asked as a community to sign labor union neutrality letters. And then we actually have a call with our leadership tonight in South Korea at 8 o'clock, which is a weekly call we have. They're 13 hours ahead of us. So these are pretty long days in Washington. But like you said, Ed, there's always a lot going on and never really any sort of lack of new issues to be covering.
Well, I'm really honored to have you on Global TV here. Please come back and stay safe and be well.
Thank you so much, Ed, for the opportunity. We look forward to coming back.
Thank you.